Welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this is our episode 56, and this is Poltergeist.
We are celebrating the 40th anniversary of this Tobe Hooper directed and Steven Spielberg produced kind of classic horror from 1982. Now, for me, this was a first watch. I don't know if you've ever seen it before, Yupo.
I have seen it before. When I was a lot younger, and I've seen parts of it throughout the years, but I'm not like fully. There were some scenes I really remembered, and some scenes that I'd completely forgot existed. So yeah, it's been a good few years since I've seen this film.
Well, I say it's the first time I've ever watched it, but it is quite. It's a massive film. I think it was made on I believe it was a $10 million budget, and it went on to make about 120 million. So it was a huge film when it was released. Obviously, it's got some big names behind it, and there are some iconic scenes that have either you've growing up, you always watch stuff like 100 Greatest Horror Moments and stuff like that, and quite often scenes from Poltergeist are included in it, or there's films such as Scary Movie 2, which parodies some stuff. So a lot of the scenes from
this film has been parodied a lot. You've got parodies in Scary Movie 2, you've got Family Guy, American Dad, you've got all kinds of, especially the
Treehouses of Horror.
Yeah, things like that. Like a lot of the animated, but a lot of shows of anytime they talk about ghosts or ghouls in any kind of format media, they end up coming back to. I'm just thinking of a name of Zelda Rubinstein's Tangina.
Yeah,
that character South Park has a really good one when they're talking to dead celebrities.
Yeah,
and it's it's not Cartman, but it looks a bit like Cartman. It's not Cartman who dresses up there, but still, it has that weird in all kinds of media, anytime someone is pretending to be like a psychic kind of possessed by something, in a lot of American shows anyway, you see this whole doing this kind of southern twang, give me them molasses.
Well, that's one of the things that I actually found about this film whilst watching it, because I think everybody knows the kind of the story of Poltergeist, about a family's home, and it's kind of about kind of haunted house kind of film.
Yeah.
And obviously,
invaders kind of thing.
Yeah, the invaders, and the daughter is taken. Now, the first time I watched this, I always thought that was it. Once she is taken, that's kind of towards the climax of the film.
Yeah, me too.
But it actually shocked me that kind of she's almost taken at the end of the first act.
Yeah.
And then we kind of get a lot of stuff that I didn't realize, because films that are I would say are a lot more modern, or only the past 10-15 years, such as Insidious, The Conjuring, a lot of stuff where they bring a medium in and they have all of this stuff I didn't realize happened in this film. So
that whole middle, or even I guess mainly the middle, kind of building towards when it has all of them come in. I completely forgot that part existed, or any of those characters came in. I remembered the Tangina, because I remembered that, but I couldn't remember how that came into play in the film. I thought that was just the very final act, which it kind of is for her. Yeah. But the rest of the characters that appear in that part, I didn't remember that at all. And also the fact that possibly their most iconic scene is right at near the very beginning of the film, when the girl goes and puts her hands up onto the TV, and you start to get the static.
Yeah,
that's on the poster, and it is kind of the scene that people remember when she says, "They're here." It's like, oh shit! I did not realize that was so early in the film. So many of that stuff happens, and I kind of forgot that the characters almost get to a point when they've almost kind of, the daughter's gone, but they're almost like, my daughter's gone, so that's why they have to stay. But they also at times they seem weirdly at peace with the fact that one of their rooms is just full of weird stuff flying around. It's just when most people would be like, I'm getting the fuck out of here, they're like, no, which plot point makes sense, I guess, because their daughter is still embedded in the house. But there was
she's going to leave her now. She's gone now.
Yeah, that's what she's gone. She's the house's problem.
She's the house down.
Problem. Yeah. No, that's what I don't know why that would just bring in my head, is the fact that you've got those characters in this house, you've had all of, I think we know, like, I'd like to think most people probably know the basic idea that, these things start to happen. But weirdly, it does get to this point quicker than you think, because the whole early possession stuff, like with the daughter, and you get the whole bit with like the tree and the outside, the like what they believe at first is like a tornado.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, and you get that iconic scene of the son getting sucked into the tree, like a kind of
the tree
what we would kind
away.
That makes me think of Evil Dead's kind of pulling, except without the rape.
Yeah,
this would be a much darker film if it included that part.
If Spielberg hadn't been attached, then that potentially could have.
Yes, Sam Raimi, I believe, produced the remake of the Poltergeist, which I've never seen, which apparently isn't that bad. It is a little bit different in some ways, but
yeah.
It is the fact that they still keep their other kids around in the house for longer than I expected them to. Yeah. It's a long time before they ship off the son in a taxi, which I don't know where it's going, and they just put a kid in a taxi by himself. I don't think anyone nowadays would put a child in a taxi and their dog with a taxi driver and go, right, off you go.
Yeah, take him wherever.
Take them wherever they can, taxi driver. It's a weird that all of this kind of happens in a completely different order than I remember.
Yeah.
I literally thought that their daughter, like you said, was much more maybe towards the middle, and the climax was trying to get her back. The whole film is almost like it's almost like a parallel of like losing your child and how they're kind of trying to find their way to get the child back, kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's got a weird like abduction kind of weird vein for it. Once for it have lost, mixed in with this kind of. I don't know, because Tobe Hooper is involved and things like that, but I feel like there is an interesting line of the whole consumerism with, at the very beginning of the film, they're all very obsessed with their television, or you have a bit with the dog that goes through the house, and every room has a different kind of snack that they can, like branded snack that they're eating on and things like that, and the dog's going through. I love the scene when he knocks the kid to the side so he can pull the bag of, as they'd call it, chips.
Yeah, that's awesome.
To us. And he goes off into the hole just to eat the bag of chips.
I was thinking, like, that dog's like heart and its arches must be so clogged. He's just gonna just start crawling and die halfway.
It just eats everything all day long around the house. It's a great dog. But it has this kind of running through it that almost like it's the television is almost part of the whole idea that like almost as if that's what's taking us. It's what's taking us away from our family. And you got that slight line running through it, which I don't really want to talk about a lot because it's just one thing that came into my head is like, that's there. And just to reference, yes, recognize it. But I don't think it plays as much part as we want, as the interesting part of the story, which is, I think, what makes it stand apart. And there is an interesting part because I don't know how much you've read up on this film, but I'd heard like this before. This film, partially, as much as the film is interesting, almost the events around the film are almost more interesting.
Well, yeah,
including the production of the film, not just the curse part of it, just the whole production. The production. So, like,
and to be honest, that was. I mean, we'll jump into the production to start with. But it was recently very hotly disputed on Twitter because obviously Tobe Hooper is the director and Spielberg is closely attached to it, and it's one of these things where, so I did a little bit of reading, and obviously it said that because of his contract, he was doing E.T. He wasn't allowed to do another film.
Universal wouldn't let him do any other film, but he was at that point when he was like trying to do multiple films at once, very like the peak of Spielberg's creativity kind of thing. And
he wanted to do a film, and then he eventually got Tobe Hooper on, and they were apparently it was supposed to be a semi-sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which this does have. It does have a very Spielberg feeling, but you can tell that because he's the producer. And then,
I mean, a load of the shots feel so like not just the score, but there's something about that family central feeling that Spielberg nearly always has in the majority of his films. And there's some that he like changes. Schindler's List isn't really. Munich and stuff like that. He does teeter off sometimes, but normally when he's doing a big blockbuster, if it's a big blockbuster, then it's family orientated big story, and a lot of the shots just feel very like Spielberg. The kids on the street at the beginning and stuff like, I mean, those kind of things.
Well, that's it. Somebody put they went on Twitter. I mean, I know you don't run the Twitter, I do, but on Twitter, people often just put up like a film that they're watching or something, and this guy put watching Poltergeist, directed by Steven Spielberg. And then loads of people got on it about how it was Tobe Hooper. And then obviously Tobe Hooper's passed away, and I don't think Tobe Hooper would be the kind of person to have Twitter anyway. But it got to people like Mick Garris and stuff like that who were on set, and they retweeted some pictures of it, saying no, Tobe Hooper directed. And then there were other filmmakers who have got on there and said, I've directed, but the producer has a lot of say in it. And so I think the common misconception is that Tobe Hooper was the ghost director, was the name, and then Spielberg came in to direct. But I think and I know there's a lot of stuff about people claiming about who directed, who didn't.
Well, I think it has been like longly disputed by actors, in the film as well, and by producers. Even some of the stuff that Steven Spielberg has said has been very widely kind of, because he wrote the story. Although Tobe Hooper was the one that said it because he wanted to be an alien invasion, and he was like, no, why don't we do ghosts? Kind of thing. So he had a hand in kind of crafting the story at the same time, although he doesn't get the story credit. Spielberg does, and other writers are the ones that actually wrote the screenplay. There you go. Michael Grass and Mark Victor were the ones, and Steven Spielberg wrote the screenplay. But it was more the fact that a lot of the actresses and stuff, like there's one actress out there who said that the majority of her scenes were all shot by Steven Spielberg, not by Tobe Hooper. And then they've got, it's widely believed that although Tobe Hooper shot majority of the film, Steven Spielberg was basically there most of the time, like overseeing him, which
has a producer
do that,
some producers
because there are similar things where a lot of people confuse Gremlins because it says Steven Spielberg presents Gremlins with Joe Dante, but they said that he was very heavily on set because that's just the kind of producer that Steven Spielberg is. However, it does have kind of skewing stuff like the fact that apparently Tobe Hooper handed over his right, this is my cut of the film kind of thing. He kind of handed over, but he kind of left Spielberg, and the composer and stuff was all Spielberg. Like the composer was kind of brought on by him, and he did actually the final edit of the film. So there's a lot of things that kind of mix with that, like as whether like who really did it, like who did the mix. And I think you've also got but Steven Spielberg did come out in a statement before the film's release and say
it was Tobe.
It was Tobe. I was there. He did admit I was very hands-on. I was part of it. I helped. He's even said that he did shoot certain things, but at the end of the day, it was Tobe Hooper's film. He shot it. He did the majority of all of that stuff.
And I think a lot of people forget that. Sorry to cut in.
No, keep going.
A lot of people forget that this was Tobe Hooper's first big budget film for an actual big studio, because obviously before. He did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which we've previously covered. If you haven't checked the episode out, go and check it out. But then he also did Eaten Alive and The Funhouse. I know he did a couple of early films, but those are the kind of 3 horror films that he did, which were all relatively low budget and not for big studios. And then you've got Poltergeist coming in, which is fucking Steven Spielberg, who at the time was the big swinging dick,
especially the biggest swinging dick. Probably still is the biggest swinging dick in if he wants to do so, he can do
it. So it's no wonder. I mean, the budget for the Funhouse, I'm just looking into it, was $3 million. I think we've Eaten Alive. The budget for that I can't even find a budget for that. And the budget for Texas Chainsaw Massacre was 80 to 140. And
that's thousand, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's not million.
So your film before this is $3 million.
Yeah.
And then
this is the guy
more than triple.
This is the guy who's made Close Encounters and Jaws and big budget films. And they're not going to exactly go, you've got full control, but I think it is because still Spielberg showed the interest that he wanted to direct it, and therefore it sounds like he was so heavily involved. That's why it's kind of caused this kind of thing, because a lot of people can imagine that Spielberg was like, well, if I can't direct it, I can basically hire someone who I can basically tell what to do.
Yeah.
And they can just make my film, which at the end of the day, technically is still a producer, not a director.
In a strange way, yeah.
But Spielberg did make a comment in between production saying basically that Tobe isn't someone who really is he's not really the person who will take a stand or something.
Yeah.
So he'll basically I'll come in and say stuff and he'll basically say yes, which again kind of implies like basically that Tobe Hooper was doing a lot of stuff. And if you do look at Tobe Hooper's other films, the ones that I have seen of his, this is very different stylistically.
But I think not just...
But it does very much feel like it's Tobe Hooper making a Spielberg film, but he still is making it.
Yeah, I would still say that it is Tobe Hooper.
I'd also say it's got darker elements.
It's got darker elements like that Tobe
Spielberg
Hooper
has. I'd say that's where Tobe Hooper shows his real true, some of those darker scenes. I just think it just seems so much darker than anything I've seen in Spielberg kind of even I know Jaws has its horrific moments, but you don't really see it. Whereas in some of this you do see it, which feels more Hooper.
Yeah,
the face ripping scene,
which is class.
Even the tree scene, the things like that. They don't seem Spielbergish. They feel Hooper.
And to an extent, even the some of the sub themes. I know I can't really I can't spoil a 40-year-old film. Yeah, no. But the idea that the swipe at corporate America with the fact that it's about how new development of housing estates, the fact that they took shortcuts and they didn't get rid of all of the bodies or anything. They just got rid of the headstones to make way for that. For me, it kind of came off as a bit of like a swipe at the whole, development. And
that's what I meant like earlier with the TV and the consumerism part.
Yeah.
All of those themes, I'm not saying that Spielberg doesn't, but Spielberg's a bit more all-American. He's a bit more like, isn't this the greatest country on earth sometimes? And some of his films comes across very like, I love America. Whereas Tobe Hooper is very much, there's a lot of problems with America.
Yeah.
And that's where I think those themes, those consumerism or the real estate or the dirt on bodies, that all feels a little bit more, those are the bits that make me feel a bit more like the commentary we've talked about Texas Chainsaw Massacre coming through, where I feel like he did add a little bit of his own. Yes, he was a early director, getting a big break from a big director who, took a lot of control on the film. And kind of was like, well, this still is kind of my film. But he was still allowed to have that little... And I bet you see that all the time nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone who makes a Marvel film, you're basically making exactly the film they wanted, but they'll give you a little bit of leeway to make a little bit of your own flair.
Yeah.
Until Eternals, when she was so popular, they were like, here you go. And people know how that turned out. So, that's stuff like that. And we've got it throughout history of not just those kind of films, but any films where you're bringing in a
name producer,
but you're giving basically like not your first chance, but you're still not like at the point where they're going to give you a big budget film and be like, do whatever, do it yourself. And that has happened before in Hollywood, and it has turned out horribly sometimes as well, where they've just been a first-time director who didn't know how to control all of that major, the amount of staff you have, the amount of people you're working, the amount of stuff you have to do all at once. It would basically be like me as a teacher walking in after I've done like training for like a week at a university and going in and go like, right, you're the head teacher now.
Yeah,
do it all. Like it just wouldn't make any fucking sense.
Well, I mean, it kind of was for Tobe Hooper, because after he went on to do Life Force, which I don't know if you've ever seen.
No,
it's a very interesting one. One of our horror podcast friends, Scaring Sam, did an episode about Life Force, I believe, and it's a really weird kind of film, very Tobe Hooper, but it was after Poltergeist. I think it was like 3 years after, and he got a budget of 25 million for that.
Yeah,
and then after it was a big flop, and then after that he did a few other kind of.
I don't remember his budget kind of having any major big ones. That's the thing. Like Poltergeist is his.
Poltergeist is probably his biggest one, to be honest.
Yeah,
but it does have I think Tobe Hooper does have a certain charm that he brings to a film, and whilst I think the main thing is that I think Spielberg is just such a big name and is quite a hands-on producer. So whilst like we said, there's all sorts of claims by actors who were on it, and then directors who were on it about who was doing what on different days. But I think it is a Tobe Hooper film, and I think it's a discredit to say that it's all Spielberg.
You're right. You're not going to be someone in Tobe Hooper's position walk in. If Spielberg comes in, someone who's pretty much, let's be honest, like he doesn't make many bad films. He knows what makes a good film. You're not kind of the person who's going to walk in and go, well, that idea shit. Like, Steven, fuck off.
Yeah, fuck off.
Get off my set.
Go back to ET.
That's a good way to be like, right, well, you're never working around here again, are you, mate? Yeah. So you get that. And, I think at the end of the day, anything in Hollywood is a collaborative process. With most of the films where they end up being like complete shitbags, it ends up having where they're like, well, they forced me to do something I completely didn't want to do.
Yeah.
Or no one actually gave me any creative support on this. They basically just went, make it. Yeah, whatever. You've got no time, you've got no budget, just fucking make it. And then they're like, well, no wonder it's shit because no one ever tried to check on it or do anything to do it. So, at the end of the day, it sounds like Spielberg was just trying to make sure it was a good film, and Tobe Hooper was listening and going along with it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean it's not his. One thing that pops in my head, I mentioned, which again now I don't know if this was a Spielberg scene or a Tobe Hooper scene, because the style of it seems very Hooper. The face ripping scene with Marty,
awesome.
Which is like really way more graphic than I expected to be, because at that point it's quite it's so family oriented. There aren't that many gruesome scenes in the film.
No,
and that one is, but that's apparently Spielberg's hands are the ones ripping the face apart.
Yeah. Because
the actor said, they basically told him, this is really expensive and you've only got one shot to get it right. And the actor went, I don't want to do it. Because it was like that. So Spielberg was like, fuck it, I'll do it then. So he was there at that scene. So it kind of draws to a question like, well, so you did that shot, but that seems like a very Tobe Hooper shot, and yet you're the one doing it.
Tobe would have been directing.
He's the one, the directing camera, and therefore Spielberg was kind of helping or being part of the process, but not necessarily. That still doesn't mean that he was the one controlling the process. Isn't interesting? The other interesting tidbit, because of that graphic, and that probably is the most graphic scene in the film, by far, because it actually lingers longer than I expected it to, kind of thing. Is the other interesting, because as we said, like we touch on the film as we go through, but I think there's a lot of stories around this film that kind of make it more interesting to kind of tell it from that kind of point of view than necessarily having to tell it through every scene in this film. Because it's a 40-year-old film, if you haven't seen it, don't watch it. We don't need to tell you every scene that happens.
No.
But the fact, the rating of this film. Have you read about the rating? So this film was given, when it was first sent to America's Board of Certification. This film was given an R rating, so basically 15 or higher. And at this point in time, there was no PG-13, or over here what we have 12A. Their PG-13 came earlier than our 12. We didn't get 12A until like the early
Spider-Man.
2000s. So we had like, I think Austin Powers Goldmember was like the first.
I think it was Spider-Man. I'm 90% sure, because I remember watching an art, and this is in my brain, because I remember wanting to see Spider-Man, because I think I maybe just turned 12 that year, or maybe I just turned 10, and I was watching
Born Identity, sorry.
Okay. Well, either way, I was watching, I wanted to see Spider-Man, and they said about there was a scene where obviously he fights Green Goblin, and he's smashing Green Goblin's face into the church or into the windows, and it was like, is this suitable? Is this suitable for children? Is it not suitable? But either way, I was able to go and see it, and I was only about 10 or 11, because they were saying it's kind of brutal, but there's no blood, I don't know.
Spider-Man was 12. It 12. Was just before. Born Identity was the first one. Spider-Man was 12. Austin Powers But I feel like these were all released close enough that they also you could have got in on the 12A because they released it around this time.
Maybe. Because I remember going to see it.
It says here the first ever 12, and there wasn't even a 12 certificate until Batman in 1989 when they decided it was, to that. But Billy Elliot got a 15.
Billy Elliot?
Yeah, so that Billy Elliot was one of the ones that started the whole 12A in the UK because they were like, well, that doesn't really seem like it deserves it. But because it has like one scene quite talking about like masturbation or something like that, I think there was like
anyway, everybody's whacking off.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Spider-Man. Yeah, so Spider-Man falls within that. I think you're right. It's definitely I knew it was around 2002, 2003 when it really. I remember going to see Austin Powers Goldmember and being like, I wouldn't have been able to see that if they hadn't just recently changed it.
You jerked over Beyonce in the cinema.
Yeah, then they realised maybe we should turn it back. It's these boys are too young for this. But Poltergeist. So Poltergeist was given an R rating at first. However, Steven Spielberg, being Steven Spielberg, and Tobe Hooper, it does say both of them. Again, interesting because those reports about them saying that Tobe Hooper basically handed over an edit and then walked away from production. Well, then why would we be fighting for the rating when the film's all finished and ready to be seen? So that's why I'm like, there's a lot of contradiction out there about this film. And I'm going to go with what Steven Spielberg said officially is that it's Tobe Hooper's film. Yeah. So, but the rating, so basically Steven Spielberg went to them and went, basically, look, it's like a family-orientated film. It's all told, although it has some fantasy and things like that. Basically, tried to sell. It's all told from a family's perspective. So he used his old Spielberg family way to say, this, and they changed it to a PG. Okay. So Poltergeist was a PG.
I can't imagine it being
parental
a PG.
Guidance.
Yeah.
So basically, films that parental guidance nowadays. Like to this day, things like I don't know, Wreck-It Ralph is a PG.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
It may have.
I had to ask in my school if it's a U, I can show any U to children. But if it's PG, I have to ask permission from the parents to show them a film like that. So we watched Holes. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Shia LaBeouf. And that was a PG, so I had to ask for permission to show them. And Coraline as well. I had to ask for permission to show that, which is a little bit spookier.
Did anybody say no?
Nobody said no, likely. But it's still a weird thing. But still, so then put Poltergeist into that category of all those Disney films and stuff like that. And this was the same because there was no in-between rating. It was either you were a 15, 18 or you were a child's film. As long as your parent was there to be a guardian kind of thing. Which, again, I guess it put it down to, right, you're the parent. You have to choose, is this appropriate for your child? But it's still weird. And there's all these articles online about how people were like, Poltergeist basically scarred me as a child because it allowed me to see it. Because parents were taking you could take like a 4-year-old to see Poltergeist.
And that's it.
And that face ripping scene is what rang in my head. It's like, holy shit, that is the kind of scene I would expect to see in Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. Well, there's that's the thing. There's some scenes in it where you could potentially say, okay, it's creepy, but it isn't outright scary.
Yeah.
And as the kind of ghosts come in, the here bit obviously very creepy, and then it kind of builds up, and even the thunderstorm where the tree comes to life and it's starting to swallow Robbie, the kid, I think his name is.
Yeah, the skeletons in the
that's later.
That is, but that's the end.
But there's
the clown.
Yeah, the clown. But the bits that you could say, oh yeah, maybe this could be a PG.
That's why I think it got away with it, because there's so much orientation. Like they said, there's so much orientation, like a Spielberg kind of film, like on the family. And this is why a lot of people actually really liked this film, is because it's told much more from how the family reacts to it than necessarily being directly about the horror.
Yeah.
Which is it's a good part. It's a good part of the film. We do actually follow through the parents. That's why I said it was kind of almost like following a child abduction kind of thing, because you see what the parents are going through.
Yeah. And I mean,
you see that stress. You see dad get more and more as if he hasn't slept a night in like months. Yeah, kind of thing. Like the way he starts to look more and more warming out, whereas mum is kind of looking like any excuse to kind of avoid certain things at certain points and things like that. So it's kind of like that weird like link between a reality and this kind of supernatural nature.
Yeah. I mean, the well, like I said, by the time this has happened, it's only about half an hour, 35 minutes into the film, maybe.
Yeah.
And where Carol Anger's missing. And I was thinking, what the fuck? There's still like an hour and 15 minutes left.
What is the rest of this?
Because I hadn't seen it, and then when we get the when we get the paranormal investigators coming in, I was like, oh, I mean, don't get me wrong, there were some films in the 80s where they would have like a seance, or they would have stuff like that. But to my knowledge, 1982 having a paranormal investigator wasn't something that I was quite. I don't think anything springs to mind of having that. I've seen it go, but Ghostbusters was after, maybe.
I think so. I think that.
Yeah.
Was that 84?
I think it was 84. But either way, having a paranormal investigator was kind of quite ahead of the time.
Yeah.
And then obviously you do get the
probably
scene.
Someone out there going, "What the fuck?" Like 70s was like this, or I
they probably was. But for me, I mean, just watching it was quite ahead, because a lot of the paranormal films I've seen of the 70s and particularly the 80s. There was one I was watching, The Changeling.
Yeah, that was another major
But that there's no paranormal investigator. There's a seance, and a lot of the other films I've seen during the 70s, there's a seance. So this was a cool aspect, and then obviously you do the face peeling scene, but even the bit that leads up to it, where you see the meat on the counter, kind of like crawling. That disgusted me.
That's all part of that Marty sequence, isn't it?
Where
he's seeing the maggot start spreading, it starts to bubble up, and
it's fucking great.
He obviously has a face recognition. There's something else happens I'll see as well. I'm now blanking on. You see the steak and it goes onto the floor. I swear there was something else that was going.
I'm sure there is.
But it's a whole. It's the most disgusting sequence of the film. But you're right. This is certain that although we have seen it for our time, and it's certain that definitely in say in 2010 onwards came back in a big style. This whole paranormal, anything to do with things like Sinister, Conjuring, all of those kind of insidious, big like paranormal investigation kind of thing. But obviously, I guess we lived in a culture where we had things like what was that TV show and things like that. What's his name? Well, we had loads of paranormal, like supernatural TV shows, and you still have them where they walk around. Derek Acora,
rip old boy.
Yeah, where he'd walk around the house and react to stuff that wasn't there. I've never been a believer in that kind of thing, to be honest. So I just, or at least not in those TV shows.
Yeah, I think I do.
I get some supernatural disturbances. I do kind of get a part of that. But I never got those shows, because I was just like, why do I watch a show where a guy walks around and gets surprised by a candlestick? Or
Most Haunted.
Or where a guy basically like has to, I don't know if someone's like electrocuted to keep him going throughout the episode. Oh my God, look at the corner of that wall. There's a light on it. Or, oh my God, a cobweb.
Well, the best thing was, and this is a complete side story, but Derek Acora obviously did Most Haunted or something like that, or a show.
Yeah.
And basically people were cottoning on that he might be faking it. Obviously, we don't know. We cannot confirm. Derek's on the other side now.
Yeah,
Derek.
If you can hear us, Derek,
Derek, give us a sign
right now. We're waiting.
But if you can hear us, Derek, subscribe. I got it in there.
Yeah, there you go.
So, but either way, he was doing this one, and people were cottoning on that he might be faking, the producers and stuff. So what they casually started doing was they made up a ghost, or they made up like a woman whose name, and it was an acronym of Derek is a faker. Yeah. And they started planting like her name, and they started planting like people saying stuff near Derek and stuff like that, so that basically that when they filmed this episode, he would go in and he would pretend to know, just suddenly hear all of these experiences and stuff like that. And then I think they confronted him on it, and I think he ended up getting sacked from the show or something like that. But it was a really funny thing that they were just like, I think this guy might be faking it. So they got Derek a call with a sting operation,
Yeah.
Rip Derek. But yeah, I think that whole kind of element is being brought into this film's great. And yet again, it was something that I didn't expect.
It's definitely an interesting part of the film. Weirdly, I enjoy because I'm not always the biggest fan of these kind of stars, but as I said before, I like, because this is more about the family and stuff like that, and it's more about the effect, and it feels like I do like the Spielberg style nature of it at times as well, though. To be honest, I like that's kind of what draws it in a little bit more for me.
Well, it's very clean.
It's the character, like
Yeah.
the character, kind of shines through in certain scenes, and you get these interesting parts, especially with the daughter, like speaking to them through the TV and that kind of. It's all around them. I like those elements of the film. Weirdly enough, it is actually, because it's been parodied so much, like I said before, it is that Tangina part that I just couldn't.
Yeah, I
couldn't take it seriously. I don't know if it was something about the actress with a southern accent, that even then I don't know if I could, because that whole part just suddenly felt like, I don't know, it just suddenly felt really out of place to me. Like, it felt like it didn't add a lot to the film. It felt like she was there to do these moments, but all she was there to do was kind of just, oh, this is just the final scene where they managed to pull her out, and they've brought in this character to be the one, like basically doing the ceremony.
Yeah.
But I feel like they just chose a little bit too much. She just seemed a bit ludicrous to me, to be honest. It just all seemed a bit silly. And it was definitely a part that took me out. But again, it's probably because of the parody, and I've seen so many parodies.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, they parodied so many characters. In American Dad, they did this whole like where he's acting like her, which is all about like the wife having like supernatural orgasms or things like that. Like, so I just could not take her seriously as this kind of little like, and not only that, like the southern accent I just always find hilarious in any form. You know, the old like foghorn leghorn. Well, I say.
But no, I was kind of with you. One thing I really did like about the film is it kind of had like almost like a fake out ending, you know?
I even forgot that. I knew certain things happened. Like, I knew that she ended up in that pool of bones and stuff like that, because I'd heard, like, again, there's a nice, we'll get to the curse and backstory in a second, but like I knew that came, and I was like, that actually didn't happen. I was like, am I just misprinting? Am I thinking of a sequel, even though I'm sure I've never seen any sequel to Poltergeist?
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just like, am I getting this wrong in my head? I'm sure this scene's in this. Or I was sure the clown did something more than just sit there creepily.
Yeah.
Like that one.
but the clown is really well done, because it's built like so well early in the film that by the time we get to I'm calling it the fake out ending, you know, even though, but by the time we get to it,
like, the storm's over.
Yeah, the storm's over.
We think this is it.
You've almost forgot about the clown.
Yeah.
And then you're like, where's the clown? Yeah. But I mean, the part with the beast and, that kind of stuff. I'm with you. I think Tangine, whatever they're calling her, I was a bit like that as well. I was a bit like, it kind of took me out a little bit. I don't know whether she was thrown in as like a comedy character. I don't really know, but it kind of...
I don't know. It didn't come across like they were trying to be comedy, but I don't know. It just... And it also, I've got to be honest, by that point, although I liked the supernatural investigators, it suddenly started to feel like we'd had such a long period of the film with them in it, that now bringing in another person to deal with this, it felt too long, even though I love like you said, the fake out, and what follows the fake out is actually great. Like the final scenes are really strong.
Yeah, awesome.
It's that section of the film almost with the investigators where at first I like the fact that they're in there and we're getting stuff, and the Marty scene's fantastic and stuff like that. But when I can't remember what the lady is, basically the lady says she's going away.
Yeah.
And then she seems to go away for no time at all, because she's back in the next scene.
Yeah.
But anyway, she says she's going away, and then she's there. It's like, and now we're bringing in someone else. It's like, I feel like we've done this now. Like, I feel like we need to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Instead, we get this extended sequence with this new character who you feel like, well, you've not been in the rest of the film. You're only in it. I feel like she's only in it for about 5 or 10 minutes at most.
I can't.
Like, it's not a long period of time between her coming in and then opening the portal in the closet and stuff like that. And it starts like some of these films can, these supernatural ghost ones, where it starts to get a little bit too into the point where you're just making up rules and exposition for what these ghosts can do or how these ghosts. Yeah. And she's that character. And it's the character I always hate in any of these films. I hate in the Insidious films, the woman.
What, Lynn Shay?
Yeah, I don't like her.
I think she's all right.
Like she looks like a creepy person anyway. But I hate this character that comes in with all the rules of the paranormal and the ghosts and the stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, I get it, but all you're actually going to do is you're going to be the person that talks to them, and you're going to be the person that brings it out or creates. I guess, and it's the same every time.
But I guess it's the problem is almost you. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but it
would have been new.
Yeah, at the time it would have been new.
It's oversaturation now of that style of character. I just think that might be waning me on it.
But you almost need that exposition character in a way.
You do, but it was because they already had like 3 other characters that could have done this, and then they bring in this extra character just to be the
it's the beast.
What's going on? Kind of seven like.
I'll say it's the beast. And the beast don't want you to.
That would be class. I say, there's a ghost in your closet.
That would be awesome.
That little girl screaming out to me.
And he's got like a frying pan. He's gonna try and get the beast for that.
He's still got the big glasses and wearing a weird
wearing a wig. Well, Foghorn is known for wearing costumes. But no, I think like the bit where they get back and then everything kind of settles. It was almost because basically, like I said, this is the first time I've watched this film. It was late at night when I watched it.
Yeah.
So we started watching it. Anna fell asleep, and I was like, I'm sure we carry on watching it. And because it was so late, I was kind of like, okay, it's like the film's wrapping up,
Yeah.
And I was thinking, maybe the bits with the bodies and the bits with the clown, maybe it happened earlier, but because I'm a bit tired.
Just thinking a scary movie or something.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, But I was thinking maybe of like, maybe I've already seen it and I missed it because I looked at my phone.
Yeah, I was thinking at one point, had I missed it in the when he was searching for Caroline in the pool early on after the storm.
That's what I was thinking.
I thought, maybe I did see it. Maybe the mum did fall and I just missed it or something.
Yeah, I was thinking I just missed it. And then when, the dad isn't there, and it's just Diane and with the kids, and the beast comes back, and it kind of pushes her into the backyard, and then we have the not only do we have the bodies coming up, because I knew about the bodies coming up, but that was quite a scene where I was like, that's a bit icky. But the worst was when she was calling out and then the coffins came up. I thought that was a beautiful looking scene.
Oh, yeah.
And that actually got me because I was like, oh, fuck, I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
And then they open and I think there's
the whole body, and you start to actually have the bodies in front of her. And then, so as part of our, as we get into it, I love that. The fact that we don't know what's true about it, do we? Like the classic, are those real bones?
Yeah, that's a rumor.
That's one of the is that Spielberg had actually allowed them to use real bones because real bones, it was cheaper to get real bones, which was like, there's loads of real bones, whereas to make plastic ones for all of those skeletons was going to cost way too much money.
Yeah.
So they just used real skeletons.
And then that led to the curse.
It did add to the curse of Poltergeist.
The curse.
So I know, so one of the things that led with the curse, part of the curse, but part of the inspiration for Poltergeist, was I've got a few of the places that inspired apparently the idea of it. So in Denver, there's a place called Chessman Park. It's a beautiful city park, apparently, prestigious residential neighborhood. It has those big green lawns and all these Greek columns and very Poltergeist, the style that they went for with the film.
Yeah,
and it was also the site of Denver's first graveyard.
Okay.
And when the park was built a century ago, the bodies were supposed to be dug up and buried elsewhere. But as in the film, the headstones were removed, but the corpses were left in place.
Okay.
So they're all underneath the park.
Ooh,
the park area and the housing area that's there. And to this day, there may be as many as 2,000 skeletons beneath Chessman Park.
Okay.
And spooky accounts of ghost sightings and haunted homes and probably Derek have been called out throughout the neighborhood over the years. And apparently that was part of the inspiration for the movie Changeling in 1980.
Okay.
And then there was also an Indian burial ground unearthed in 1969 during the construction of a supermarket in Los Angeles in Agoura Hills, which is a suburb. Apparently that's buried underneath there, which was discovered in the digging, but they still believe there's more left underneath. There's still more bodies. And that's where they ended up building a giant supermarket there. But Poltergeist filmed right by that area.
Okay.
So it's the housing area is obviously part of it's sets, but some of it is actual houses, and part of it filmed was on that street that is around that Indian burial ground. And they believe, although they found it in the supermarket, they'd only dug up the supermarket part. They believe it may stretch all around the area.
Yeah.
So there's that classic, is that creature all under there? Who's hiding under who's hiding under that? So it's interesting. So a lot of people would know about this kind of the curse.
Yeah.
These are part of it, like the burials and stuff. It's a relation to the bodies and the idea that they actually use skeletons. Or
that's what
they filmed on places of skeletons, which makes people believe that there was a curse. Now, some films have curses, and we haven't done an Omen episode.
The way you just like it's a fact. Like, some films have curses.
No, some films have. What I meant was some films have curses, which I don't know. Some of it seems really, truly like spookily, eerily fit. Yeah. So the Omen one, which I'm not going to tell you details because we're going to do an episode on the Omen, and we will talk about all those curses. But that one has deaths and stuff that are weird, so weirdly related, that it's creepy. Whereas I'd say a lot of the deaths in this one they're not completely just to do with this first film anyway. It's more of the trilogy of the film, the people that appeared in them. But most of the deaths just seem a little bit just randomly coincidental to actors that were just in the films. Yeah,
but they're tragic.
Horribly tragic. Yeah. I mean, the most weird one, obviously, is the fact that Heather O'Rourke, Carol, died not long after filming the third in the trilogy.
Which I think, did she do a cameo in the third, maybe? Or I can't remember.
I think she was in it, but they had to add some extra seats. They had to kind of work around her kind of thing. Some people say that they cut it. Some people say that she was already done. Her mum said that she was already done filming it. So she doesn't know why they say that there's a stand-in. But they say in a lot of scenes you only see the back of her, like a logo of blonde hair, not the front kind of thing. So that's what led to people to believe. But they kind of said that no, she wasn't still filming the film. She'd finished that long ago before she died. She died of cardiac arrest related to inoperable bowel syndrome that hadn't been discovered. And it's tragic that she was 12 years old when she died. And it's a horrible tragedy. And, it's because she was on that and she was filming a film about spirits and stuff like that. They felt there was a link. But I guess it's not so much just hers. It's the fact that 4 people were lost in a similar time frame, all related to the production, that kind of made it more this curse of it. Plus, they said that there were weird things that would happen on set sometimes, but I couldn't find too many of them. The people that say it, but I couldn't find many specifics on things that actually really happened, apart from like that people felt off when they had the skeletons that apparently were real, and that there was one bit where I think the mother said that she was close to drowning when she was doing that scene and things like that.
Well, that's it. I mean, I know there's a documentary on Shudder, I believe, called Cursed Films. And Poltergeist is one of them. I probably should have watched it before this, but I think, like we said, it doesn't. I remember distinctly many years ago. So this is another little side story. But when I was about 12, maybe 13, 14, I got my own little box room, and I got my first TV. And on Friday,
box room makes it sound like you were like
Harry Potter
under the stairs, right? Because you're English, and therefore now right now all of our American or any other listeners are thinking, right? So it's Harry Potter.
It's Harry Potter. Yeah,
you were locked in a room, but you had a TV.
So it was kind of like I would love watching things on Channel 4, and there was a series of cursed films, and I watched one about the Omen, which was very creepy and stuff like that. But when I was trying to look into the curse of this film, it was only really that there were 4 cast members who died kind of during or soon after the film. But like it says, Heather O'Rourke, that was maybe 5 years later. Dominique Dunn, who obviously played the older sister, Diane Freeling, was murdered by her separated partner, John Sweeney, in 1982, which is obviously tragic. And apparently she was rumoured to be reprising her role in the second one, and it was shortly before they were set to film that she got killed. But But then there were two, Julian Beck and Will Sampson. But I don't think they were in this.
They were no. Julian Beck was in Poltergeist 2, and I think they're both in Poltergeist 2, and theirs were basically just cancer.
Yeah,
they were just they were standard natural, and I believe even Zelda Rubinstein, who's been asked a lot about it, she's dead now. She died in 2010, but even she said like it's all just a bit coincidental. They're just deaths that people die. You know what I mean? Like sadly, the two of the younger children that were in the film died at quite young ages. Is sad and tragic, and those ones are much more leading to this idea of a curse, yes, but. The other two are just cool. Like they're just like two actors. It's like being years after a film and being like, all these actors. It's like me looking at certain like I don't know, My Fair Lady in like the 1930s and go, did you know there's a curse? Because all those actors are dead now.
What? No, I think it's that's it. I think I haven't seen Poltergeist 2 and 3 or the remake. I think I will plan on watching them. Because there is an element of continuity.
Yeah, I'd like to check them out. I've heard nothing.
I've heard nothing. I've heard Poltergeist.
It's not like Exorcist when I heard that one of the
I heard the third one's better.
It's fantastic. I heard the third one's fantastic, but again,
I've heard the second one's good, and I've seen the preacher who Julian Beck plays. So I know that Julian Beck was an elderly man. So an elderly person passing away, whilst unfortunate, isn't unexpected like Heather O'Rourke dying or Dominique Dunn. Who were young. Especially Heather O'Rourke.
It's only certain. It's only been certain. Like there's certain actresses and certain actors, I think, or certain set people that have just. It's only very like Jo Beth Williams, who was the mum. She seems to be quite outspoken on the film quite a lot. Saying, she's the one that said quite often like Spielberg was filming a lot of our stuff, but she said things kind of almost anti the film at times quite often. Really? So. And she's the one that said a lot because she wasn't comfortable in that skeleton one because she wasn't told about it. So she said she kind of didn't like Spielberg anyway and things like that. Yeah. So that's why I think she wanted to put more of the frame on him because she wanted to basically say that he wasn't doing good things.
Yeah.
She said that she had she'd come to set and pictures on her wall were crooked and that she'd realign them, but they'd become crooked again 5 minutes later, which I don't know. If they're on a set, they're on a set, things are going to moved around, bumped about, or maybe just one of the roadies is fucking with you.
Yeah, or maybe it's they intentionally were supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. Like, whoever's the art director was like, "Who the fuck is
doing this?" Yeah,
it was like if she's on the actual set, it'll be like. It's a fucking scene where the supernatural is going to be shaking the house. They're meant to be crooked, you bastard. Zelda Rubinstein, the Tangina, claimed that she had visions of her dog telling her goodbye. What? That's fucking funny to me. She claimed that she had a vision of a dog telling her goodbye, and that the actress's mother told her hours later that a dog died that day. I should have finished reading.
You should have before started laughing.
Before I started laughing.
Because now
it's not funny to laugh at dead dog.
No, but now
the image of a dog telling me goodbye in a vision was just I don't know.
Well, I have an image of like when Homer Simpson voiced that character and then they killed him. Poochie. When I have to go now. And the dog just floated off. That's the image I'm having. Because you laughed before.
Because I laughed before finishing.
A tragic tale.
The one Oliver Robbins, who played Robbie Freeland in The Sun.
Yeah.
He dismissed any notice there were actual supernatural on set. Though he said he'd never heard any of this like at the time or anyone told. Although he was a kid at the time. To be fair, so they probably aren't going to go up to the child and go. It's haunted. Someone moved these pictures. My dead dog said.
I had a vision of my dead dog.
I'm sorry, Rip Dog.
Rip Dog.
I'm sorry, Zelda Rubinstein up there. Rip you, Rip Dog. You.
But yeah, Oliver Robbins, I think he quit acting shortly after this.
Well, he's the one that, I mean, if you get strangled by a clown doll, you've hit the peak.
Yeah, that's it. But that is...
apparently that terror, like it's sort of one of the things where he was generally fucking scared out of his mind. Like apparently they kind of they talked to him about it, but they didn't make it clear exactly what would happen. So then when they wrapped things around him and they had the animatronic, because it was animatronic, the doll, apparently he was fucking terrified out of his mind. Apparently I had like severe nightmares and stuff afterwards and stuff like that, which I'm not surprised. Yeah. Some people hate clowns anyway, but he's probably spent his whole life like, wouldn't be surprised if we heard that he like went around and massacred clowns.
Yeah.
But no, what they did to him as a child.
But that scene is, is incredible. Like, I know we've taken a big tangent, but that whole fake out ending where, she falls into the pool and then the skeletons kind of, the clown is grabbing Robbie, it's so kind of, I don't know. Like I said earlier, the clown is planted so early that you kind of forget about it, and then when it hits, you're like, "Oh fuck!"
Yeah,
and clowns are fucked anyway.
I did forget because I was expecting. This is the Scary Movie 2 effect.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen Scary Movie 2, there is a clown that is almost exact looking of that doll, except the difference is that the clown is a rapey clown who tries to grab people and strangle them, but also it's implied at one point he tries to do so to one of the women that seems a bit more like kill them or like something with his long tail, which is more like a long penis. But then he gets Ray. He gets Ray,
which is
who says amazing. He has a similar effect.
Yeah,
he can do that as well, and except it's his penis that stretches out and wraps around the clown's neck.
That's awesome.
You basically get what is implied is an insertion scene where the clown goes from scared to a big like face.
Yeah, that scene is incredible, man. Those first two,
so fucked up.
Those first two scary movies.
There are some people that would probably be like, "Oh, that's fucking terrible" nowadays if they watched it, but it was so funny.
Yeah, those two scary movies are goat, man.
They are so good. They just work so well.
Yeah, but then when they, where I think going back to the very end, when the dad Steven does turn up with the his boss, the real estate guy, and the whole house is in mayhem. And then they find out that only the gravestones were moved. Then we get that iconic line, which is, you didn't move the bodies, which is just, it just hammers it home.
While the whole house is imploding, basically.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I thought his boss was actually, because it has this like blast that goes out and throws them back.
Yeah.
He gets hits with so. I thought that was him getting killed at first. I didn't realize he was just getting knocked down, but the whole visual part of that, the effects across this film are like really good. It's another bit I found really interesting was the way they create things, like with the tree with Robbie at the beginning, like him getting sucked into it. They create the effect by doing it backwards.
Okay, yeah.
So he was coming out of it,
that makes sense.
Not going into it. So they just reverse the footage. So instead of it looking like that, he gets backwards into it. But the house one is like, at the time, was one of the most expensive special effects
really
that they'd ever done.
I'm not surprised.
So yeah, the Klausing hat, not the Klausing hat. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
The collapsing house effect at the end. It was a £250,000 to do it, and they basically had one chance to get it right. It's the house implodes, and that's apparently all it said in the script was, and the house implodes, which cost that one sentence. Basically, they called it the 250,000 sentence, because it's like, well, how the fuck do we do an imploding house? This isn't the time of CGI, or it's like, it's not, an imploding is not the same. Explosion, we can do that. Blow up house,
easy,
blow up a little model. But apparently, just to create the model itself costs so much fucking money. Most of the cost was that. So they're like, right, this is already costing too much. How are we going to make this house basically get sucked into a vacuum? So the implosion was accomplished using a 6-foot model of the house with cables attached to the side and a vacuum mounted beneath the floor.
Okay.
As the cables pull the walls down and the vacuum sucked up the debris, a camera filmed the destruction at 300 frames per second. So that they could really like that, because when it's the faster the frame rate tends to be, the slower the image kind of plays through. And more than 12 times normal speed. The first time the footage was played back at standard 24 frames per second. So the site slowly disintegrating the house.
Yeah.
And it made the studio producers like gasp at how have you achieved this? That's on my notes, but I know it said on the thing, it wasn't just that. So they sucked it into this vacuum with the explosion happening around it. They also had shotguns. So this, you hear like a
Boom,
booming sound. That shotgun. Apparently, they had 4 shotguns that were shooting into it at the same time to create that effect. As it all got sucked to this vacuum and literally got basically ripped into the debris. The house, that 100,000 plus 6 foot model that they had to create gets sucked into this thing. And apparently, Steven Spielberg has that. Had it preserved all of the debris into like a perspex top that is at the top of his piano at his house.
Oh wow.
So he has all of that weird debris that was created because it was such an expensive shot. He's like, I'm keeping that.
It is an incredible shot.
It looks completely, it looks like there are so many ways that could have been a terrible shot because it could have been so fake looking. Like, obviously there are a few bits that are a bit dated, like the arms that come out of the TV
and the face scene, it looks,
or the tornado in the background, like that's the classic style of imposing an image on an image, which nowadays just doesn't always hold up.
No,
but that scene, like all the way to it getting sucked into basically a black hole, is just like, holy shit.
It's incredible.
And and imposing that onto it with everyone looking around it, I was like, well, it's 250,000, but it was money well spent for what is such a big finale.
Yeah, because it is.
It feels so much more like, I think that's why I felt a little bit disappointed before it got to the fake out, because I was just like, comes a bit of a, she's back, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, because they just go
normal and they're moving out. I get it. Like, but that ending where it's like, no, I'm not even just moving out, I'm leaving this town completely. Like, we're done.
And not only that, but like, I mean, so we've watched this effectively for the first time 40 years later. And we kind of have been spoiled by CGI and by such a big advancement in filmmaking, film production. You know, like recently, I finally watched Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was awesome. It looked really cool. But you know, imagine watching this in the cinema back then. Yeah. It would have been incredible, and it still is incredible to see. You know, it's just so beautifully done, and the fact that they had one shot at it. You know, you always hear about directors saying like, "We had one shot at this," and the way that it worked so well, it's just awesome, man. And it's the scary notion of the idea of that you've ever got that one shot together, right? Like if that house had just half of it had accidentally just like broken apart, but the other half stayed, then that's 250 grand. It's like we have to rebuild that entire fucking model, or we just have to get rid of this completely out of the film and just say like the house blows up. Yeah, the house blows up.
Just blow the fucking house up.
Or they just leave the house.
Apparently they literally said it would have actually ended up cheaper to try and implode a real house than it did to do the model. The model actually cost more to make it look real than it would have been to just somehow get a giant huge vacuum and just rip apart a house. So it's such a crazy thing that but it completely adds to the effect of how this film has kind of held up over time. It's for a first time viewing as well, but also imagine, like you said, being in the cinema. And now imagine being 3 years old, watching someone's face and get ripped apart, or awesome. Watching a house get torn to pieces and the little children getting like taken or sucked by a tree. Sucked in by a tree. That couldn't sound wrong.
Well, I'm just gonna, just before you make your next comment, my friend, I'm gonna jump over to the social media quickly. So obviously you can follow us on Twitter at CMTH Podcast and Instagram. So I put out there, what are people's thoughts on this films, and we Needed Roads at Needed Roads Podcast. You should go check out. Put the Bloody Love podcast Bloody Love Poltergeist, one of the best horrors of all times. You Didn't Move the Bodies, and the mirror scene and the tree scene, and then of course the classic, and then I Spit on Your Grades, so it's an absolute classic. Blockbuster meets Scare Maze, and That Cloud is one of the creepiest things of all, and they actually did it for the first ever episode. They kicked off with Poltergeist, cool. And it's a pretty good film to kick off with. Because it's such like a classic film. Right? For me, it's good to be able to say that, I can tick it off the list and say, I've seen Poltergeist. I enjoyed it, and I want to watch 2 and 3 now.
I want to have a look at see what they're like. Because I believe my only held-back is that I believe that the Tangina character becomes more in the sequels, which, as I said, that was one of my only things, but that's more due to time. But it does, I absolutely agree. It's held up so well. I kind of like the fact, and we've talked about that dispute, but I kind of feel like it has some really good family-orientated character stuff that is very Spielberg, that heightens it. But also it has some darker elements that I don't believe that Spielberg would have created. So I believe Hooper's had that defect. And some of those work so well. I mean, I wouldn't put this on a family-friendly horror list.
No, definitely
not. I believe over here it's now deemed a 15.
Yeah.
But, it's definitely not that family friendly. It loads you into it, but that's kind of what's brilliant about it. It loads you into a sense of thinking that it's going to be quite tame horror.
It does, doesn't it?
But it really starts to build at certain points in the film that does become quite terrifying.
Yeah.
If you hate clowns, you'll absolutely fucking hate this film, probably. If you hate anything supernatural, it has a really interesting way. And it also, the fact that the child is taken into the other world is an interesting one that I've not really seen in any other horror done, or at least not done well. Where this is a very, we've kind of lost her, but we're able to communicate with her. So it kind of keeps this sense of it's more of a tension-filled film than it is, and it's not a constant scarce, but it is really interesting the way that they approach the idea of, invaders coming through from another world, kind of coming through there. And the nice way they've kind of skewed that from its original Alien kind of invading the world.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been interesting to see an Alien film. I love Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yeah, and I love.
I like that. I'm surprised that they never made it, because the idea of the aliens coming through originally was this similar kind of thing. It's like somehow the the portal is coming through their house.
Yeah.
And, but it is more based on just the family from that perspective, unlike the kind of the mix in the original, where you've got, obviously family is essential because it's Spielberg film, but you've got like a wider world, but this time it's more like they're dealing with it as if it's a mix between alien and supernatural. And you don't know which. I feel like there was an interesting idea in there that could have worked, where you're like, is it ghosts? Is it aliens? What is it kind of thing?
Yeah.
But I guess if you're thinking, because we know it's Poltergeist, it's more supernatural. But it could have definitely been played up more to be like, we don't actually know what this is kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's a 40-year-old film, so everyone knows what it is.
Yes. Have you got any more comments before we wrap up?
No, I feel I'm very happy with the way that all of this has come together. And then I do find films like this, I much prefer talking about films when they've got a little bit more meat on the bones to talk about in terms of outside of the film.
No, definitely. And I think the next film we will be talking about does have quite a good bit of meat on the bones as well.
It does.
So we'll tease them with that for next week. Anything else?
That's it. I'm done.
Beautiful. Well, as always, we hope you enjoyed the show. We thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it, then leave us a lovely review and tell a friend, and hit the subscribe button. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. Come and let us know what you thought about Poltergeist, and we will see you next week, where we are celebrating another 40th anniversary. And until then, we will see you soon. And goodbye.